Can Tesla buck the franchise system? Can a new slogan invigorate Chevrolet? And then there's this Detroit Auto Show thing.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy, episode 178 for January 11, 2013. Yesterday's Chevrolet, tomorrow's Corvette. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time or 2300 GMT. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or by following the links on our website. Peter.
Gianni.
How are you? I'm good, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be.
Good things to talk about today.
Another Thursday evening.
Yeah. And then, of all things, we got Jason Vines back in the house.
Got the band back together. The band.
I got a call from Jason, 2 days ago?
On Monday.
Yeah, he said you're in town, and could you come on? And it was like, of course you can come on. So what you doing in town?
Here for the auto show. A couple other clients for Fleshman Hellard, which I work for, and but I look forward to a very positive auto show. The negativity is gone, and I think it's going to be pretty much a celebration, and I look forward to seeing the new products.
Cool, and I want to talk about that later on in this segment, but there's some other things that we got to get to. And also later on in the show, we got Mike Davis, author of, about 100 years of Chevrolet in pictorial form. We'll be getting into that. But speaking of Chevrolet, Peter, they done changed their slogan.
Yes, they have, John. Find new roads is the new slogan. Now, let's review. Chevrolet has had three of the greatest advertising themes of all time. See the USA in your Chevrolet, baseball hot dogs in Chevrolet, heartbeat of America. And I would, one tier below is Like a Rock, which in retrospect they never should have walked away from.
Could go back to, really.
Truck, yeah.
They never go back to old stuff.
Yeah.
No, none of them.
Yeah. Find new roads. I haven't seen execution. They think it'll globally be better for the brand because they really believe Chevrolet is going to be this monster global brand. I believe that when I see it. But, it could be great. I haven't seen the execution, so I have to reserve
No, that's
judgment.
a good point. You got to see the execution.
Yeah.
The slogan alone, although Chevy Runs Deep, which was the prior one, you always said was never a good slogan.
It was never a good slogan. To me, it was a positioning line. Ad agencies come up with positioning lines to direct the flow of the advertising. You work against that. Sometimes those positioning lines escape from the conference room and see the light of day, which they shouldn't, and that was one of them. I like the thinking behind Chevy Runs Deep, but it shouldn't have been the theme.
Chevy Runs Deep was awful. Please buy our cars would have been better. Anything would have been better. I think this one has potential. You never know. You look at Ford Motor Company. They wish like hell they never gave up on quality as job one. They because the subsequent ones have been pretty awful. Nissan, I still think they have the worst one. Shift what? Mm-hmm. I still don't get that. So Nissan had a good one, Life's a Journey, enjoy the ride, but they just didn't have any products at the time. So let's give GM a little bit of chance to, you're right, execute this. And you're right, they are trying to be a global brand, so they can't go the heartbeat of America anymore.
Yeah,
right.
No, they can't. But, you just think in your mind that Chevrolet always, the great Chevrolet themes have a certain snap.
Right.
Almost.
This isn't one of them.
Well, not off the top of your head.
And I'm not trying to put it down. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we'll just have to see.
If it was a great line, good lines just hit you. It's like, ooh, that just hit it right. But what I do like about Find New Roads is it's like a declarative statement to do something, as opposed to Chevy Runs Deep, which is just a statement. It's not a call to action.
Yeah, that's why I suspect the executions will be. That's where the rubber meets the road. We will see if they can translate into powerful stuff. I mean, they can, but you know, the Onion just came out with their pre-Detroit Auto Show report. And here are some of the models that the Onion expects to see next week. Honda Accord includes a new voice-activated response system that assures the driver he or she made a reasonable choice at a decent price. But I love this one. The Buick Charity comes with NPR car donation form and glove compartment. Toyota Highlander. New model will hunt down every other Toyota Highlander. It's good.
We find new roads. That's pretty apropos for Michigan because you'd like to find some new roads.
That's right.
Yes, because we're
need to repave both of them, right?
avoiding the roads that we have.
So what is it that makes a good slogan?
Well, think of the great ones. I mentioned a few. Mercedes had probably the greatest one, engineered like no other car in the world, and they walked away from it because there was the young MBA types came into Daimler and said, well, we have to make the brand more approachable. Why?
Yeah.
You know, because the minute you do that, then you take the aspiration away from it. So that was a good one. The ultimate driving machine. Now, the Germans, you know, they sort of get marketing and then they don't. In Europe, the BMW theme is joy. So a couple of years ago, they tried to shove joy down the U.S. dealer's throat. We're going to put joy. It was on their race cars. That was at Sebring. And the dealers revolted. So what are you doing? 25 years on this theme. And you know, even if people just drive to the store and back, the theme still resonates.
What's Lexus? Something excellent.
The Pursuit of Perfection.
Yeah, okay.
But I think they've changed it. They've got a new one. Now Toyota has a new one. It's 3 words also, which I forget right now. But
And it's not a good one if you can't think of it.
yeah.
And of course,
Because I can't remember any of these things anyway, and to me, they're not that important.
Well, here's another great one. Datsun, We Are Driven, I think was great. And, you know, I don't think they should have changed to Nissan in this country.
When I was at Nissan, we were contemplating turning it back to the name Datsun.
And they're reviving the Datsun brand, but as a low dollar, I mean, you know, low cost.
I came into Nissan's ad agency just after they made the change, and so everything we did was more Nissan, and it's just like, why would you do that?
Dogs love trucks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, dogs don't buy trucks.
The one tagline that I always thought was clever was Ford's, have you driven a Ford lately?
Yeah.
Because it was like, no, I haven't, so maybe I should, would be the implication, or yeah, I have, I've got one. And I thought it was very good.
What was the one they came out with after Nasser was out? It was Look Again. That was horrible because when I heard it, I kept the images in my mind were my wife when I would say, hey, where'd I put that whatever? And she goes, it's down there. I don't know where. Look again. And
No.
But what is Ford now? I can't even
Go further.
go further.
Actually, executionally, it works well.
Yeah, I think Ford advertising has been the best
Yeah.
It's been very good. I
among the
agree with
domestic.
that. Changing topics then, what do you guys read of Tesla winning this lawsuit, you know, to set the stage? They are setting up like Apple's done. Apple's got its own Apple stores. So you don't run out to, you know, ABC Electronics, whatever, or XYZ Electronics. You go to the Apple store. Well, Tesla does the same thing. They want their store, but not through the franchise system. And now I got to believe 50 state dealerships in associations in 50 states are going to sue them, but they just won. They won several, and they've just won this one in Massachusetts.
Well, it's a different climate now. You know, maybe that will take hold. You know, I had a buddy of mine in high school. His dad was like the number 3 guy at Kmart, and he loved the automobile business from afar. But you know, Kmart back then, every morning they had the tallies from stores all over the country in their headquarters. He said, I don't understand how the automobile business does it without control of their retail outlets. And I said, but this is this is a good example. I mean,
My problem is that for the last 25 years, everybody's been trying to bury the dealer network in various forms. It's not apropos to Apple. Apple has a product that drives people to them, okay? Tesla has a product that very few people are interested in. It's high end and so forth. It's a very expensive product. I think they could use the benefit of having someone that knows how to sell cars. That's why I think the Volt will do better, because it's out of the Chevy dealership, and you have the service, and you have people that don't just stay in the auto industry. I've worked with Elon Musk, and a few years ago he said he could.
You did. What are you working with Elon Musk for?
No, I worked with him a few years ago. And
okay.
I
can't say what?
I can't talk about it.
Soylent Green.
Oh yes. But I was brought in by a former Chrysler guy to help them in a crisis, and
They have a crisis every week.
yeah, they do. These are high.
I know who brought you in then.
Mike Donahue.
Yeah, that's who I was going to say.
But they have to actually get some product. It looks a little bit better now. They're getting some great reviews and so forth.
Their car is awesome. I haven't driven their car, but for them to win Motor Trend Car of the Year out of the box, first time effort, that's impressive.
So it's encouraging. But you're talking about expensive vehicles.
Yeah. I understand.
And then we have their counterpart Fisker, which is the biggest disaster of the last, beyond what happened to GM and Chrysler. It's a disaster.
As I dubbed it, Henrik Fisker's rolling note to self.
It's just, and there's an article in this month, February's Car and Driver, about the EV industry. I'm a big believer in the EV industry, and I hope we get there someday. But they have been an unmitigated disaster. Fisker has, I think, will continue to be. Mm-hmm. But Tesla, this award will help them, but the average Joe can't afford their vehicle anyway.
No, that's right. But, what I've grudgingly come to admit is that Tesla's got a shot at this because, and this is what I said from the very beginning, actually, is that they're bringing something new to the party. Fisker's not. Fisker's bringing beautiful styling. Well, if that's all you're going to bring, you're going to get clobbered.
Well, Cadillac's bringing the ELR, the production version, to the Detroit show of that Cadillac they showed with the Volt 2.0 architecture underneath. So,
right. But what I'm getting at is, if you want to, as a new car company, break into this business, you got to bring something new to the party. You got to bring in an all new kind of product, not just different styling, all new kind of product.
Yeah, but why do you have to bring all new kind of infrastructure? Why do you crap on everything that's been done before and say, oh, the dealer network doesn't work, that doesn't work, this is an all-new buyer? Not necessarily. These dealers aren't stupid.
No, they're not stupid, but the door is open to do it a different way. The reason why we have franchise laws in this country and why there's an NADA, National Auto Dealers Association, is the same reason why the American auto industry has got the UAW and the labor laws. Way back when, they screwed over their hourly workers, and way back when, they screwed over their dealers. And they screwed them over enough that they all banded together. And I mean, literally, the NADA and the franchise laws are very much like the UAW. And I'm not saying organizationally. I'm just saying, as a pushback to the car companies. And so, as you guys know, they're far more powerful than the UAW. The NADA is. They're in every single state. They're in almost every single county. The car dealers, in many, many cases, are like, the paragons of their communities. They donate to the Little League school. They help the Girl Scouts out. They make, sure there's convertibles for the parade. They're embedded in there, and they have incredible connections with every state attorneys general in this country. They're enormously powerful.
Especially at campaign time.
Especially then. So for a Tesla to come and go, I don't think we're going to be part of this. That's like Henry Ford saying, I'm not going to do the Selden patent thing.
Yeah, that's where I think they're making a mistake. They don't realize how powerful they are. And you said it, and most of the reasons you said why they're powerful are good things. I have a lot of dealer friends, and they are the pillars of their community. It's where you go to first to get donations. Bill Galling here in Detroit area, the biggest Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge dealer. Every time I went to him for Forgotten Harvest, he just wrote a check. But there's 100 people behind me. And in the tough times, he goes, we're running out of money we can donate. But they're always the first. And that's why it's always frustrated me that dealers have a bad reputation.
Well, there are bad dealers, but I agree with you. As a group, I like them. They're entrepreneurs. In most cases, the stores have been in their family for 2 or 3 generations now. And in most cases, they're far more fun to hang out with than car company executives who tend to be far more reserved and, super politically conscious of everything that they're doing. Car dealers are. They're a much more fun group to be around.
Well, during the restructuring of GM and Chrysler, a lot of them were profitable and still lost their stores. And that was due to the Obama administration and Geithner just saying, no, you're not cutting enough. Now, the thing about it, during that whole time, all the dealers, even before we got into the crapper, they all wanted the dealer numbers to shrink, because less dealer numbers, the more the ones that survive. But it's the old line, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die.
Well, yeah, no, they'd sit through those meetings. We have to reduce the number of dealers, and all the dealers would nod, and they'd say, as long as it's that guy, those guys, not me.
That's right. Well, you know, it's the easy way to solve it is you just pay people enough money. You give them the value of their store, but that's not what happened.
I'd like to go back to Tesla, though. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering about this Motor Trend car here. Did they really drive it for any length of time?
That's a good question.
Because a lot of other people got exposure to it, literally were 15-minute drives.
No, but I can tell you, and I believe Chubachetta still is on the decision at Car and Driver, helps them in the judging. But I know I've talked to several of the people who drove it, Chubba being one of them, and he drove it extensively. I mean, it wasn't a 15-minute drive.
Well, there's the people who made the car work are all ex-Detroit industry.
Well, remember, some of the final engineering was done here in the Detroit area.
And the people forget that. Everyone says, oh, Elon Musk, it's just a whole new way.
Yeah,
Silicon Valley saying, oh, we know how to redo the auto. No, all the nitty-gritty stuff was done here.
If you want to be able to come up with a body and white structure that can meet all the FMVSS standards, you know, crush, rollover, impact, it's all done here. And this is where all the testing's done, too. I mean, physical property to test it. So, yeah, I mean, what they've done out in Silicon Valley there is awesome. And that's why I think Tesla's got a shot. What they've brought new to the party is this ability to use these so-called laptop batteries. And, you know, they call them the 18650s. And what they've developed is how to monitor each and every individual cell so that none of them overheats or gets overcharged or undercharged, and do this all in real time. And, you know, while everyone else is talking about prismatic batteries and talking about, oh, yeah, when we get the volume, the price will go down. Every year, there's something like 2 billion of these 18650s manufactured. So you want to talk volume and cost down, that battery's there. And now you can argue, well, the packaging's not this, that, or the other thing. But Tesla's done a beautiful job with it. And so much so that Daimler is licensing them. Toyota's not only licensing them, they said, here, build an electric RAV4 for us to meet the California standard.
But they're out of money again.
Tesla?
Yeah.
Are they? Or are you talking about Fisker?
No,
He's definitely out of money.
Fisker's always out of money. No, Tesla's, they need money.
Well, like you say, Peter, I mean, look, I think the car that they've done is brilliant. My hat's off to these guys. And in some way, shape, or form, it may survive. I've always believed, and I'm not the only one, their business plan was, let's get to a point where somebody big comes and buys us out, and then they haul the weight for what's really got to be done. Because I can believe he's burned through all his investment money, and all this business does is it eats cash. Eats cash.
It's like the Prius. Prius lost cajillions of dollars for so many years, but it had the big Toyota, and it allowed them to get it more competitive and so forth. I think as a standalone, I don't think they can survive. Just Fisker, but Tesla, they need to have a big cash cow that can say, all right, this is an investment in our reputation and future technology, and keep them going until they can break even, maybe.
Right. Well, like I said, Daimler and Toyota are in there. Let's see if they stick with it. If they don't,
they're also they're just in there to learn what they need to learn, and then say, see ya.
Oh, they want to steal the secret sauce. How's the software work that monitors all these cells? I'm sure that's key to.
It goes on in this business all day in Detroit. You know, they bring suppliers come in with great ideas, and then at some point, the car company either decides, oh, we'll do it inside, or we're going to bid it out. We're going to take your idea, your proprietary idea, and we're going to throw it to your competitors, and we'll see. You know, it's enough to make, you know, suppliers come across the desk and beat these people about their head and shoulders. Right. So we'll see about Tesla.
Okay, it had happened with the Jeep in 1941. Ford made more Jeeps than Willys did.
Is that right?
Yeah, because they needed for the Army, and Jeep came up with this after they stole it from Bantam. Mm-hmm. And the U.S. government said, we need more. You don't have enough capacity. Here, Ford, here you go.
We need volume.
Yeah.
Next week, of course, we're going to be at the Detroit Auto Show, doing after hours there, talking Corvette and stuff. But, Peter, what do you think is going to be the big news there? The Vette?
Well, you know, a new Corvette comes along very rarely, so it's the biggest news. Well, I just think there might be some surprises we don't know about at the show, so we'll have to reserve judgment. Right now, Corvette's clearly the biggest thing.
Yeah. I just saw the new Lincoln crossover, compact crossover, which I can't talk about. I think they pulled the embargo off in a couple of days now. But it looks pretty good, I'll tell you. It's going to have a lot of people benchmarking that from at least a styling standpoint because it's just a concept.
Does it replace the cow catcher?
Well, this is a smaller, this is off the Escape.
All new. This is a C segment
It's off
crossover,
the Escape
which they've never
architecture.
been in there, right? Yeah. And
but let's face it, the MKZ isn't even out yet. I mean, it's rolling in the dealers, but really volume at the dealers will be in March. And then this vehicle is a year away or more.
Yeah, right. At least a year. It's 2014.
But who's kidding who? I mean, the new Lincoln Motor Company will not officially be the new Lincoln Motor Company till they do a big rear-wheel drive concept.
Correct.
Call it the Continental, whatever they're going to do, but they need that statement vehicle.
And I keep saying it, and everybody laughs, but I'm dead serious about it. Do it off an F-Series frame.
Well, they've got the platform to do it, and that's the next-gen Mustang. They can stretch that out. They can do it. You watch, they will do it. I know they'll do it.
Make a bigger one on the F-Series.
And then, Cadillac GM's working on the production version of the CL as a sedan. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing some not so great things about the program that Captain Queeg is asking them to make cuts. That's not the program you make cuts on. That's your hero car.
Right.
It'll be the Corvette and the CL for General Motors. There better not be any cost cutting or corner cutting in that program, or that'll be bad. But Ackerson's on a cost cutting thing. I mean, that's
got to make those numbers.
Yeah.
Even if it means cheapening up the product, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've all been on cost. Every company's been on cost cutting.
Yeah, I know.
For the last 10
But the worst thing is when you hear something about a $5 item in the interior that there's a fight about. Really?
Right.
On a car that's going to be $125,000? I don't want to hear that.
No, I agree, and it's as I said, it's not a good sign. I've been saying all along that if Cadillac and Lincoln really want to get in the ball game, then GM and Ford have got to make a commitment to invest $1 billion a year per brand for the next 20 years. Don't even think about anything else. And then earlier this week, or was it last week, Audi comes out and says it's going to invest $17 billion by 2016. So just when you think that maybe you're going to have a chance by refreshing some of this stuff,
the Volkswagen Group,
they're going to blow past you.
Volkswagen Group is just
blow past you.
Yeah.
Right. Volkswagen is the juggernaut.
But it's got to be more than $1 billion. I mean, Ford spent $2.1 billion on the Contour and the Mistake back in the 90s.
Right.
Well, there's an initial development figure, which is more than $1 billion. But you're right, John.
Well, I think if you go clean sheet these days, because remember, everything in the kitchen sink was thrown into that Mondeo program, and the total global number. It was built all over the world. It was several different models, different variations in different markets globally, different engines, all new engines, all new all new everything, all new everything. That's the most, and nobody does it that way anymore. And I don't think anybody can afford to do it that way.
Well, but when they were developing that, they were hit by a stupid stick because they were building engines here, shipping them to Europe, and then shipping other stuff. It was just product development. At that point, Ford product development was so totally broken.
Yeah, but one of the things that car companies have all gotten good at these days is what they call reuse, where you reuse so many of the parts of the prior model.
Right.
but in areas where the customer doesn't see, touch, or experience it. What does the customer care about a connector?
Or a fuel filler.
All that stuff. And it adds up when you change everything. And then, by the way, guess what? Now you got to change all the tooling in the plant because none of the jigs and fixtures and any of that works either.
Well, and one of the greatest debacles in Chrysler history, Bob Eaton stood up at the Detroit Auto Show for the new Grand Cherokee and held up a bag. These are the only parts that we carried over from the previous model. Right. And that was the statement. We were so proud of that.
Yeah.
That was a disaster.
Right.
No, you're right.
Well, the new Corvette has just 2 items that are carryover, and they're insignificant items. So,
and I do agree that there are times where you do have to significantly upgrade a
Corvette needed a thorough upgrade.
Right. You know, I'm glad there's no interior carryover parts.
Yeah, no, apparently the interior is great. Right. Shouldn't we have our word from our sponsors?
Yeah, why don't we take a quick break and we'll get Mike Davis on the show here. So, Ben, let's give a shout out to our friends at Bridgestone. Mike Davis, welcome to Autoline After Hours.
Oh, thanks, John. Good to be here.
You know, I think this is a great way to introduce him because Mike's an author, and I'm reading off the back of one of the books here that we'll be talking about. It says, author Michael Davis is a veteran automotive journalist and historian, as well as an author of 6 previous photographic histories. Though he's a Chevrolet historian, he spent 25 years with the Ford Motor Company, which is where I know him from, before returning to journalism and authoring and serving as the executive director of the Detroit Historical Society for 5 years. In addition to holding degrees from Yale and Eastern Michigan, David is a member of the Society of Automotive Historians and a trustee of the National Automotive History Collection at the Detroit Public Library. So this is cool having you on here.
Well, thanks, John. Well, you could say I live in the past.
So
you
Mike,
guys live in the future.
So, Mike, what was the year that Chevrolet sponsored Bonanza and they took over the last 5 minutes of the show? Was that, and they introduced all the new Chevys? Was that 58 and 59, or was it 60?
I can't tell you, Peter.
And they did it a couple years, right?
I'm not a television person that watches.
Yeah, I think they did it in a couple years.
Like that.
That was big time innovative back then.
In this, the second 50 years, I do have mention of those Chevrolet advertising slogans that you guys were talking about earlier. In particular, the see the USA in your Chevrolet, and then I've always felt the one that was so effective, maybe you guys didn't feel so.
Baseball.
Was the baseball.
Hot dogs, apple pie.
Yeah, right. Now, what I found interesting in that is that, and it's hard to figure out how this could work, but evidently GM in Australia and South Africa took that slogan and changed it somewhat for their own purposes.
Yes, that's absolutely
I don't know.
John, look at that.
Baseball and apple pie.
Cricket, shrimps on the Barbie.
Yeah. No, you're right. There is a South African and an Australian version. I've seen them, and it's wild, and I can't remember what they are. Somebody in the chat room can probably find that very quickly, but yeah, that's right. It had a global resonance.
Well, it was kind of interesting from the point of view, at that point, GM was not marketing Chevrolet as a global brand, as they have just started to do in the last couple of years. But that's part of what the story that's told in these 2 books really is, how things changed over time. And I really use the history of Chevrolet as a window into the history of the industry. And it's...
Because you grouped, you named different chapters as to sort of what was going on in that.
Basically, the names of the chapters, is the shorthand to the auto industry in many respects. And for example, this I didn't know until I got into this deeply with some real Chevrolet experts, as opposed to a guy looking over the fence, so to speak. Chevrolet's roots go back to Michigan's lumber industry. Well, who'd have thought? And I won't go into the details, but read the book to find out. But or look at the pictures.
So because that's what we should tell the audience is they're picture books.
Yeah,
literally.
These are picture histories in the tradition of Life magazine. And in my checkered career, I was once the correspondent for Life, but I grew up with Life magazine. and have my fondest memories of looking at the pictures. But, you know, using the picture to tell the story. Each picture has to stand alone, and its caption has to stand alone, but it also has to move the whole narrative along.
Where'd you get all the pictures?
Mainly, for both books, in the National Automotive History Collection and from General Motors Archives.
There's a lot of pictures there. I mean, how long did it take you to go, and how did you choose which ones went in there?
There's a sort of a story here, and that is that Arcadia, the publisher, came to me with this on last December 1st, that is to say, 13 months ago. They had just discovered, I shouldn't say this, that Chevrolet had a
100th anniversary.
Centennial, yeah, right. And to make a long story short, I immediately went out and started scanning the images. But this, you know, it requires having a good knowledge of history in the first place, automotive history, but then selecting the photographs to consider. I mean, that's the first cut. And then the second cut is that you got to winnow them down and make, you know, tighten it up and not. Well, I found that I had so many pictures that I didn't want to throw away. So I proposed to the publisher that we do it in 2 volumes, the first 50 years and the second 50 years. And they said, no, we're not interested in that. Okay. So I was struggling to stuff all of these, and these books are not expandable. You have a set size. So I was trying to stuff them all in as well as I could into 1 volume. And then they came back to me a month later and said, we changed our mind. We will go with 2 volumes. We'll give you an extra week to get the first volume done. But to do 2 of these books in a year is really incredible. And I actually was doing other books at the same time. So,
well, one of the reasons I asked how you chose what's in there is there's this really old, cool picture that Peter just pointed out to me of this Carrozzeria Pininfarina version of a
Corvair.
Nobody,
of a Corvair.
Yeah, nobody ever saw any of these. Nobody ever saw any of these, as far as I know. I mean, I was deeply involved in the media, whether I was
the 3rd generation Corvair, the last Corvair.
Right, and I even see a little bit of Ferrari.
Yeah,
no, this was before the 2nd gen Corvette.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
Clearly influenced.
And I never could find out anything about the car. I mean, when you're trying to do 2 of these in, as it turns out, really in 7 months, you don't have time to spend a lot of time on research. You got to go, and particularly for pictures. So you go with the pictures that tell the story. I endeavored, particularly in the one on the last 50 years, to where the big thing that happened was product proliferation. So all of a sudden it goes from being 1 Chevrolet to in 7 years, 7 Chevrolets. I'm sort of assuming the Corvette.
This all happened.
Yeah, right. I'm setting the Corvette aside because it didn't amount to much in the first few years. Not from a business point of view. I mean, the car nuts loved it. The racing people loved it. But from a business point of view, the Corvette was not a big deal then. It grew, in particularly beginning with the Stingray. But with so many new products, when you're going from 1 big Chevrolet, which was doing, you know, in '63, they did 1.5 million big Chevrolets, and Ford only did 750,000 of the big Ford that year. It's how times have changed, not only in the industry, but among the 2 companies. And so I tried to have the major introductions of every new model, beginning in 1960 up to the present. That was one thing. And I also had to serve up a lot more trucks, because all of a sudden it's the trucks that are the new models that people are looking at and so on. So I wanted to make sure I took care of all the car nuts out there. So, you know, that tells you how you do the selection. The earlier years, the first book, the first 50 years, a different story, because I personally didn't have that much familiarity with those cars of before my childhood and during my childhood. And I started getting into, you know, firsthand memories with the cars of the, say, 39 on. And so there it was a matter of doing research on what were the changes. Now, for example, I discovered that there were actually 2 sizes of Chevrolet during the Depression, and I call the smaller one the Depression Chevy. But nobody today knows about this. And they look alike if you just saw them you'd say, oh, that's a 34 Chevy. But when you, if you put them side by side, then you can see the differences, the longer hood and so on of the Master Deluxe and so on. So the earlier book, the first 50 years, there's a whole lot of stuff that I had to learn myself, to teach myself, and try to figure out what was important. Now, some things I knew about the copper-cooled Chevrolet, for example.
You got a picture of that in there?
Yes, both the engine itself, cutaways, a couple of cutaways, which again, I don't think many of those of us in the automotive media today have ever seen. In the first book, you're going to find it, of course, in the 20s on the right-hand page. And then there's the car didn't look particularly different. There are only two of them left, I guess. One of
copper-cooled?
Yeah, one of them's at the Henry Ford Museum, as a matter of fact. Excuse me, the Henry Ford.
The Henry Ford, that's right. Yeah.
And I think the other one was in the Haas collection, and I don't know what happened to that.
Huh, that's wild.
But that car led to General Motors creating the proving grounds, the first proving grounds. So it's a story it's told in the first copy. But actually, I learned about that from Sloan's own biography, my years with General Motors in 1958 or 64. It was intended to be for the golden anniversary in 58, but I think the GM lawyers sat on it for why, I don't know, until 64, on their own former chairman. Anyway, the copper-cooled Chevrolet led directly to the proving grounds.
I did not know that.
Which GM started with the Milford Proving Ground.
Sure, and this was what,
and then
early
everybody
20s?
Else,
I think early 20s, mid-20s?
It was 24.
24, okay, well,
24
early
it got started. And they had to invent testing grounds. I mean, there weren't any. All the testing before that was done on the public roads. And so among other things, they had to learn how to make these curved concrete highways and not have the concrete all slide down to the bottom.
As they poured the banking, for the bank?
Yeah, exactly. Because the highway, the U.S. Public Roads Department, they didn't have any turns like that.
Right.
And Packard then had, and Studebaker had the next ones. Ford didn't have a proving ground until they converted the airport in 37, I think it was, and Chrysler didn't have one until after the war. And the independents.
Vietnam War.
Excuse me, I'm showing my age.
Jason was making a joke about Chrysler.
Right.
You weren't.
I don't know. Well, you know, when I did a book, 5 years ago, whatever it was, on testing. Actually, it was called Detroit Area Test Tracks. Another Arcadia picture book, but I found a picture of 1939 Chryslers being tested on the sort of test ground that was behind the Mound Road truck plant. It was a big, these were just farmers' fields, and here's this 39 Chrysler, pictured in muddy ruts. And that was their proving ground.
Well, they had a proving ground for cars in Hamtramck.
Is that right?
Right behind the plant.
Well, those were the sort of, Dodge had that as early as 1914, but that was to make sure the car, when it came off the assembly line, actually worked before they shipped it, and before the invention of chassis roll dynamometers, for example. And this still, I know I've had a car in the past where there was a note on it saying, don't worry about the mileage on the odometer. This car was chosen to be tested by the plant personnel and so on. And if you may remember that one of the auto companies got in trouble over one of those. Was it Chrysler?
Chrysler back in with Iacocca, they were doing it in St. Louis, and they were allowing the employees to drive them, and then they roll back the odometers.
Yeah.
And Iacocca said this went beyond stupid, and it was one of his greatest moments.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. Well, stuff like that happened, and it was, you think of the problem with, and again, where PR comes into these, the problems that GM had with the quote Chevrolet engines in Oldsmobiles, and it was handled badly from the start. There wasn't anything wrong with the engines in Oldsmobiles. They were all the same 350s, but they got a bad reputation out of it.
They did. And, going back to the test tracks again, remember Fiat had one on top of their factory, on the roof of the Lingotto plant, which is an almost exact copy of the Ford Highland Park plant.
Which did have a little test track, actually, but of course it started as a horse track in the beginning. I mean, the property.
Well, GM still has that little track inside the tech center.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, yeah, there have been a number of these mini tracks. I
was on that with Zaraduntov.
Yeah, they've still got one in the tech center.
Yeah, the tech center with the bank on the
which is a lot closer than having to go all the way out to Milford, it was then when it was built, it was 40 miles from the GM building and I can't think now the name of the Argonaut building, where engineering was in the 20s. So it was a lot better to be able to go, back behind the garage to do your testing. And I know the Edsel plant, Edsel headquarters in Dearborn, had a little test track right there, and Ford's Livonia transmission plant had an associated small track.
That's right. There is a small track there. That's right.
Again, it was easier to do it right there than to go even as close as Dearborn. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's.
Well, we sure have talked test tracks.
That's a different book, and that's an older book. We won't talk about it. We'll talk about the new books.
Well, hey, it's time to get to rapid fire and listen to what the audience is interested in asking us about. So, Ben, let's get to that right now. You recognize that guy? Supposedly that's you.
I think this is my idea.
Okay, this is rapid fire where we get to what some of the audience wants to ask about. Mike DeWhite, it's more of a comment. He says, where have these books been all my life? George from Brooklyn says, when did automakers start using wind tunnels for testing? That's a good question.
Well, I have in my book on testing, which, as I say, it's another Arcadia book, I have a picture of the 1938 cold room at Ford. These things evolved over time. The wind tunnels originally started with using scale models. Mm-hmm. And I know at one point, Ford was, for example, using scale models and renting testing in the wind tunnel of one of the aircraft manufacturers in a suburb of Atlanta. What was that, Martin Marietta?
Yep. Marietta, Georgia.
So I'm not sure any of the manufacturers today have their own full-scale.
Oh yeah, they do. General Motors does. Chrysler's got a tunnel.
Do they really?
Okay. A lot of automatic.
A couple of Japanese just based on their ads because they shoot all their ads in there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
Well, of course, aerodynamics has become much more important now that we're in the fuel economy era.
Right. Jay Cujo, question for Mr. Vines. Will you have influence on the upcoming Detroit show? If so, is there anything that you can do to stop GM from blasting some kind of techno music for 10 seconds between introducing the presenter to the exec to the car?
I will tell them tonight. And I have zero influence. But I will tell them not to do techno music.
It also holds for being on hold for tech support.
AAH guest 287 says, who's seen the C7? You seen it?
I have to take the fifth.
JJ says, I hate those Lincoln names. I can't remember one MK from another MK. I'm kind of I don't like those.
I agree. And, this goes back to the problems with names, which turned out to mean they're fine in North America, but there's a dirty word in some foreign language.
Yeah. One was testicles at a Korean automaker. The problem with names are great if the car is great. And suddenly people, they fall in love with it.
Trust me, if Lincoln does the futuristic rear-wheel drive concept and it's drop dead gorgeous. You're right, Jason. And
The name
and
won't
it's
matter.
called Continental.
The name won't matter.
Hey, look at Nissan. Look at Nissan with the Xterra. What a stupid name, but it was fine because the vehicle's really good. One truck of the year.
But what I object to is all these letter and number combinations, and especially if you look in the luxury segment now amongst crossovers, everything's an X. Everything's an X.
Well,
and it's getting hard for me to remember whose X is whose.
I mean, look at Cadillac. They had some fabulous names in there.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I agree with you, Peter, and I don't know who started, but I hate these MK whatevers, and I'll
It's
tell
a
you,
wannabe
even the
copycat,
Ford insiders can't keep them straight.
Oh, nobody.
Oh, look at it. Who did the Equus? Is that Hyundai?
Hyundai, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the book about the woman that had sex with a horse?
The guy who had sex. No, the guy who poked the horse's eyes out.
Yeah. What? I think there was sex in there too. So maybe that's why he poked the horse's eyes out.
That's right. Hey, we've got some phone calls. Ben, let's bring in the first one.
Yes, Jim Campbell calling, and it's not Jim Campbell from Chevrolet Performance. Just like to comment on some of the new themes that our car dealership, our cars are using. And Chevrolet, I think, was Like a Rock was probably the most longest and successful. And then I think the other one was Lean on Me. What is with the manufacturers moving away from music? Wasn't that a big anchor and solid line for people to have a memorable, experience with regards to the brand name? Thank you.
Well, there was very many years when the music was extremely important. I mean, Heartbeat of America was done by Joey Levine Music in New York, and it was a hit.
I go back to see the USA in your Chevrolet.
Dana Shore?
Yeah, Dinah Shore. Man,
Yeah,
that
and
was
so,
just,
a lot of
It
times...
ran for, 10 years.
Yeah, a lot of times, right up until the late 90s, it was still popular. I mean, Like a Rock was used, right up to then. And then there was a shift in that if there was a hit song that could be appropriated for a campaign, they would do that. And now it's become very uncool to have a music, a music
your own
campaign.
music.
Yeah, it's become
Take somebody else's.
Yeah.
Well, remember when GM, when was it, 10 years ago or more, hired Aerosmith to redo Dream On? And Gracio, or whoever the marketing guy, spent something like $3 million for them to slightly change it. And it made no difference in the world, and all it did was anger all the other marketers because now the cost of getting an original rock song redone.
Well, I mean, Bob Seger and his manager, Punch Andrews, extricated $4.5 million a year out of Chevrolet for Like a Rock. And no one will admit that. They said, well, it was time to move on. No, they got tired of paying the money.
Well, but wasn't that song written specifically for...
No.
It was an older... It was
a Seeger song.
I thought I heard it...
No, he didn't write it for Chevrolet. It was a Seeger song, and they,
But it worked great.
Yeah.
And you know what? $4.5 million? Come on, it's chump change, really. If it really works, and it really worked.
I know. There was all kind of political posturing behind that decision. The guy who was behind that campaign, Don Gould, an old friend of mine who died very young, was behind it, and the chief creative guy at the agency never liked anyone getting any attention but himself. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
Well, the cult of the personality comes in heavily, particularly at these changes. You have a perfectly good slogan or campaign or something. A new guy comes in, whether he's a general manager or a president or whatever, the broom has to sweep clean. And I don't know.
Well, that doesn't
you've
happen
seen this,
so much this year.
Jason, you've seen this too.
Yeah, it's happened in the past.
I've observed it over the years.
Yeah, it's happened in the past, but that's not the way it does now. I mean, they're sharp enough if there's something that's working that, the new guy or gal comes in and says, 101, don't screw this up.
Yeah.
Can I tell a quick 30-second story about music?
Yeah.
Launching the Prowler.
What?
The concept car at the Detroit Auto Show. I'll tell, Tom Kovaleski wanted to do it to ZZ Top. And so they called the agents and said, how much it costs us to use one of the songs? And they said something like $10,000. And Tom said, no. Went ahead and used it anyway. And one of the representatives of ZZ Top was at the Detroit Motor Show when they used it. I'm not sure the exact number, but I think it was in the millions that we paid in the lawsuit.
Oh, wow.
You know, you got to be careful.
Yeah. We got another phone call there. Let's bring it in, Ben.
Hey guys, Andrew Jackson from Grand Rapids, Michigan here. On the Lincoln topic and the brand trying to reinvent itself, what are your guys' thoughts on pursuing, say, the presidential limousine away from GM in order to get the brand more exposure? Thank you.
I love the idea.
Yeah, well, that could happen. I mean, I know it's part of the ad campaign. Have you seen the new commercial for the Lincoln Motor Company? They reference the presidents who have driven in Lincoln.
And the president who was shot in one.
Well, you kind of want to gloss that over, Jim.
Ixnay on Alistair.
There's some tales to tell about a lot of that, but I don't think we got.
No, I like what the guy's saying, and I would love to see Lincoln. To your point, and hey, why not put it on an F-Series? The thing's got to be armor plated, right? You know, you may as well start with a truck chassis.
The current presidential limousine, the Cadillac, is a
truck chassis.
It's a suburban chassis.
Yeah, there you go.
15 tons.
So then, Expedition instead of F-Series, build it on that. Make a car of heroic proportions.
Remember Ed?
Go for it. I love the guy's idea, the caller's idea.
Yeah, remember Ed?
Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, remember Ed Welburn said that they did the presidential limousine in Studio X.
Right. That's right. He did tell us that.
And it means lots of sales. One.
Okay, we've got another comment from Hal who says Toyota's new tagline is "Let's go places."
Yeah, it's just so memorable. How could I forget that?
And he says, "From moving forward." Moving forward never did anything for me. I kind of like "Let's go places." I think that's
it's all in the execution, and what I've seen, they're pretty good. Pretty good.
Ben, another caller. Let's bring it in.
Yeah, this is Clem Zarowski in Delmont, Pennsylvania. Earlier in your program, the Autoextremist was sort of making sport of the 2000 Impala design. I've owned 30 new Chevys and 11 new Corvettes, and I never owned a car that attracted so much attention. When we got the first ones around, people chased us around into parking lots to find out what type of car it was. We went to the NASCAR races, and we'd come back and we'd find 8 or 10 people standing around the car trying to figure out what it was. So
I think he's talking about
a little off on the design of that 2000 Impala.
No, I think he's talking about the long, sleek one that came after. That 2000 was a committee car. You're a jury of one. Never mind.
And when they were chasing you around the parking lot, you should have stopped.
Yeah, should have sold it right then and there.
That was. I think the current Impala actually looks decent.
By current, do you mean the one that's on sale now?
Right now. It's a
the
fleet
2014
car.
they gave
No. I'm talking about the one.
Current Impala is fine. The new one's really good.
Right.
The 2000 was a committee design abomination.
Yeah. No, I agree.
That was a car that I said I'm not doing this anymore and left advertising.
I disagree. I don't like the one that's being replaced. That is a rental car, and I've rented it many times, and it is just so bland. And it doesn't inspire you. The new one, they kind of woke up and said, wow, this used to be our car.
Well, John Cafaro led the design team on it. John doesn't do bad things. So.
Well, it's what management allows you to do, too, in the sense that in the past they said, here, make sure Avis buys this. And now they're saying, hey, let's go after retail customers. And it's a different ballgame.
Well, it's the whole good fleet versus bad fleet thing. If it's good fleet when it's in rental fleets and people get into it and go on a vacation, go, this is a really nice car. But when they get into it and go, boy, this sucks. I'll never buy a car from this company. That's when they really get hurt.
Right.
And all the companies have faced that.
That killed the domestics in the 80s.
It did, but that's when they were allowing the rental companies to dictate how to spec the cars.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was linoleum floors and roll-up windows and.
Well, and in the 90s and earlier in the last decade, especially the domestics would flood the fleets with early built cars to test them out. And of course, the quality's not good because they're early build cars, and so people drive to Florida with their family, get in a minivan, and the thing falls apart, and they go, "Oh, I won't buy one of these." That was just stupid.
Right. Okay, we got another phoner here too. Let's bring that in.
Hi, this is Jeff W. from Albany, New York. My question is in regards to the recent closing of the Walter P. Chrysler Museum. I just kind of wanted to get the panel's thoughts as to why the museum didn't make it, and also should General Motors ever consider opening up a museum, as Peter suggested, which I think is a great idea. Are there any lessons they can learn from that experience so they don't make the same mistakes and their museum be a success? Thanks.
You comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, the Walter P. Chrysler Museum, when I was head of PR at Chrysler, that was under my watch, and they were thinking of killing it. The problem with it is it's in Auburn Hills, Michigan, which is not a destination point for anybody. It also was,
And it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and while fairly elegant, it's very small. You can see everything in 10 minutes. It wasn't very interactive. And when you compare it, for instance, to the Henry Ford or to all this other stuff, it's one of those things you go there and you've seen it, and you won't go again. The problem with the Chrysler Museum, and Bob Nardelli wanted to really kill it, and I saved it, thank God, for a little while. Chrysler in warehouses in Highland Park had literally hundreds of cars just sitting there, ones they didn't need. The Ram in 93, 94, they had 5 versions of it. Why? You know, so they had this incredible cost. You just didn't get people to go there. But it's much like the Automotive Hall of Fame, which I was the chairman of for a couple of years. It's one of those, it's a monument to dead white people, dead white men. And it's one of those you go to it, it's not very interactive, and you don't go again. So you have to say, can we sustain this? And no, Chrysler needs to focus on selling cars. And if they want to have their museum, they should have put it inside headquarters, in the lobby and stuff like that. It was Bob Eaton gone amok.
You know, GM should have one. I mean, it's a travesty, but you see what...
Well, they do have one. It's just not open to the public.
No, that's a frickin' warehouse, and it's an embarrassment. I don't care how they try to present that. It's an embarrassment. You go in there, and it's just like, you see the original Shark, and it's tattered. And
Would Daimler do it that way? Would BMW do it that way?
These new palaces...
No, they're
Volkswagen,
museums.
no, they're serious
The new
about it.
Mercedes, the new Porsche, the new BMW museums are, you know, just heroic.
Well, the Germans have a different culture about history and museums and so on, and Europeans in general.
I don't think we'll see a GM museum, a proper one, in my lifetime.
Maybe GM and Ford and Chrysler and the suppliers who have got stuff, maybe they all get together and do one big one and make it a destination point.
Well, I threw out this idea about 4 years ago. When you're redoing Kobo, have one side of it a huge hallway, that is the Motown Museum. Have another, the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame, instead of that disaster in Kobo, and have the other one, the Automotive Hall of Fame, where you could.
So isn't the Joe Louis going to be torn down and expanded for Kobo? Is that the point?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, just go to the fact that most people come here by air now, and unless it's changed since I last went through Detroit Metro, you'd never know you were in Motor City. There are no cars displayed there. Now, in the past, you go back a while, yes, there were, but even the Baltimore airport, BWI, the last time I was there, had some interesting cars displayed.
No, I agree. It'd be great to see the Henry Ford or others display cars at the airport.
And
there's
you
so
go
many
to some
millions of people come through
there. I know
there.
some other airports where they have some vintage airplanes hanging from the ceiling. Whether or not they really had anything to do with those planes is a different story.
Yeah.
But
You know, the Frankfurt
living
airport
in D.C. area now, I think if you put a museum about cars in D.C., it obviously couldn't be a part of the Smithsonian, but have it where people go to tour and see all this stuff, and you could possibly have it.
No, that's a good point. Go where the people are.
Yes, go where the people are. That's why the Automotive Hall of Fame blew it.
Visitors come to Detroit from all over the world, and they come and they say, it's Motor City, where's the car museum?
Well, that's what Henry Ford is.
Yeah, the Henry Ford is an awesome museum.
Yeah.
Hey,
And it's not just a Ford museum either.
No, that's right.
Ford brand.
We got another call here. Ben, let's do it.
Hi, guys. Happy New Year. It's Jonathan out in Old Japan.
All right.
Hey,
Always
Jonathan.
enjoying your podcast version of the show. Just want to say last week, Peter, in your determination that Chevy did not do a good job hiding the new Corvette, well, kind of disagree. There's 100,000 of us Corvette enthusiasts, easy, that have no idea other than some crappy sketches what the new Corvette looks like until Sunday night at 7 p.m. when the release hits this week. So just want to let you know, you guys have seen it. We haven't. We think it's been a pretty well held up secret.
Yeah, you missed what I said,
anyways,
Jonathan. You missed what I said, Jonathan. I said that this tease thing that Chevrolet has carefully orchestrated was totally worthless. They didn't need to do anything. They shouldn't have done anything. There shouldn't have been any tease video. There shouldn't be any, oh, here's the new logo. No, this is a Corvette. It should be, you know, so you're just chomping at the bit for anything, and they should have locked it down and said, you're not going to see it till the 13th, and then you'll see it. But I just thought that whole campaign was just...
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter.
They don't need to hype it.
They don't need to do that. And I hope the Ford guys and girls are listening, because when that new Mustang comes out, they better do it right. I don't want to see any teases. You know what they should do? 50 years to the day that the first one came out is when that new Mustang should appear. And they should make it appear in New York, in Times Square.
With Iacocca?
No.
No. And not, you know, there shouldn't be any tease, nothing before they show it. You know, it should be...
Right. Ben, we done with the phone calls there?
Hello, John. I'm enjoying your program. My name is Mike Mason, Waxahachie, Texas. Been in the car business 40-plus years. As far as the advertising and names go to cars, I think we need to go backwards before we can go forward again and get rid of these letters and the names. Hey, enjoying the show. Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. And obviously, we totally agree with that.
Yeah.
The only ones that get away with numbers is BMW.
Well, that's how they always started.
Yeah, BMW and Mercedes.
That's how they always
Let
did
them do that.
Right.
That's their thing.
Right.
You know?
Okay, we got one more comment here. VRM Chris says, Jason Vines, welcome back and Happy New Year to you.
Well, Happy New Year. It's good to be back. I love being a part of this, and that's why I called John on Monday. I'm looking forward to the auto show this year.
Cool.
Like I haven't in a while. I'm looking forward to an exciting industry, finally back on its feet.
Get them to open the firehouse across the street, which was the best party in town when you ran that.
Hyundai's doing that, but not at the firehouse.
You can't, if nobody could, you know, some people said nobody could replicate that. Anybody could.
Sure.
And journalists would love it. I want to talk real quick, 30 seconds. Get Car and Driver for February. They have a great little piece, the most wanted list, profiling those who threaten the car and driver way of life. For the love of the car. Number one, Clarence Ditlow.
Yeah.
What he and Ralph Nader have done to try to screw the auto industry. Apple. All of these app manufacturers have turned the car into electronic things instead of...
Too late. The horse is out of the barn.
Yeah, Apple's not the criminal there. It's Microsoft.
Well, it's his, Microsoft, Sony, and Samsung. The 1983 Toyota Camry for making blandness.
Acceptable.
Yeah, the insurance industry for the rates and making it so if you have a teenage kid, suddenly your rates go up 156%. And light rail. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars in this country, like in California, and nobody's riding it. And so,
well, it's not built yet. Nobody can ride it.
One of it is built. The LA's new exposition line has cost $930 million.
That light rail.
So those are the 5 things that are killing the love of cars. So I thought it was...
I like that.
I thought it was pretty interesting.
Cool. Mike Davis, thanks so much for showing up tonight and coming on Autoline After Hours.
It was fun.
Good. Jason, you got to come back more often.
I'll be here every month, so I'll give you advance notice.
I didn't mean that often.
Oh, shut up. No, I want to get the Farrago guy back on the line.
We should do that. We should dig him up sometime for an anniversary show.
Was he lost in Sandy, the hurricane?
I don't know.
I was just hoping. Sorry.
Right. And Peter, I'll see you next week, man.
Yeah, see you Sunday
We should
night.
tell everybody, we're going to be at the Detroit Auto Show on Monday, webcasting live starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Also on Tuesday, we've got really top-notch people lined up to interview for those 2 shows. And then we're going to be back on Thursday doing something very unique during what they call Industry Days, where we're going to be bringing on supplier executives and talking about what's going on in the business with them. But anyway, thanks for having... What? After Hours. Oh, well, and After Hours next week at the Detroit Auto Show, where Peter and I will be there with, what's the guy's name for Corvette?
Harlan Charles.
Harlan Charles is what Chip Drake's, and Todd Lassa, right, who's now moved. Todd, who has just recently moved from Motor Trend to Car and Driver, will be joining us then. Whew. I think that's all the promotions.
I thought he moved to automobile.
Automobile.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I was told
It's all the same
wrong.
corporation.
No, he's not. No, he's not a car and driver.
Todd is.
You're right. You're
Todd
right.
is at automobile
Oh, I was told
with
wrong.
Joe DeMacio.
Okay, good for him. Anyway, thanks, folks.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. Get your daily news fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.